Good morning. Welcome to the AnteoTech post AGM update. During the event, we will go to Q&A. I ask that if you are wanting to ask a question, please make sure that your audio and video are not on mute. I would like to introduce your host, Derek Thomson. Thank you, Derek.
Great, thanks, Lisa. Well, the global need for effective responses to COVID-19 has never been higher. In Europe and in the US, new waves of outbreaks are taking hold, and with infection numbers much higher than were experienced in the first wave. Governments, including President-elect Biden in the US, and clinicians are responding with a multi-pronged approach that includes renewed focus on mass population testing, control of the spread of the disease via isolation, and increased coordination and investment in the development of vaccines. The outlook for global control of COVID-19 remains uncertain. We anticipate a minimum 3-year program to start to control the disease, assuming the most optimistic forecast of the distribution of vaccines. And in that time, we see a highly elevated need for high sensitivity testing to deliver point-of-care clinical decision support, screening, and vaccine efficacy, as well as a detailed program of work to roll out vaccines safely and efficiently. Right at this very moment, teams of scientists from prominent diagnostic development and distribution organisations in the US and Europe are assessing the AnteoTech COVID-19 antigen test in a head-to-head analysis against the largest brands in the market to further validate the test's sensitivity. At the same time, teams of scientists in India and the US are using Anteo reagents to develop binding conjugation that can be used in quality control testing in the largest vaccine programs currently in development. Similarly, our passion and focus on energy continues unabated, and as the market for efficient lithium-ion battery technology continues to rise, we are leveraging our development work to fine-tune our products. Today, we are working directly with 9 large collaborators on lithium-ion component development to deliver significant electrochemical benefits to the global lithium-ion battery markets. During an extraordinary year of events, 2020, that no one could have forecast, we found ourselves in markets that were volatile and changing very rapidly. I asked our development teams to respond by becoming more agile. I asked them to pivot towards specific industry problem sets that would enable AnteoTech to best leverage the power of our IP and accelerate significant contribution to our capability and our revenue. Examples of our agility include the development of the COVID-19 antigen test, but also a focused dialogue and solutioning discussion with the vaccine industry, as well as a creation of focused development to deliver electrochemical performance enhancement to products already being sold in the lithium-ion battery market. Despite very good control of COVID-19 in Australia, for international companies such as ours, the uncertainty of how COVID-19 will affect our business will unfortunately continue in 2021. We have prepared and we are ready to face this challenge over the coming year and to grasp its opportunity. Our approach will be to harness our technology and capability and our ability to be agile in the full knowledge that during the course of this tumultuous year, 2020, that same approach has delivered an increase in our pipeline of direct selling and revenue generation opportunities focused on resolution of known problems. Leverage of our capability and technology to offer new products and services. And lastly, the ability to focus on delivering large projects with the potential to make a significant impact on the company, the first being our COVID-19 antigen test, ready for delivery in early 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity to address you today. if I recall, last year I stood in a room with about 35 people, and we had a really good session around the company's business, and that was made even better by the questions that were asked during the course of the event. Unfortunately, this year circumstances require us to use this different forum, but I encourage you to ask questions when Lisa guides you to in certain places during today's presentation. That said, I think people are eager, Lisa, so perhaps we can start with a few slides.
Thank you, Derek.
This is our disclaimer slide, and again, we have to go through this process of helping the audience understand that today's event is by no means a recommendation on the stock. It's simply a review and open question and answer session on the company's operations. So again, no recommendation whatsoever about how to invest in the company. Thank you. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, in terms of the agenda today, we're going to do a short business overview, followed by a deep dive presentation of the life sciences and energy markets. We have, of course, done 2 webinars recently on both sides of the business. And again, for those people that want more information on the company in terms of understanding the 2 sides of the business, I'd direct you to those webinars, which are on our websites. Okay, we'll go to the next one, please, which is our business overview slide. Thank you. Okay, this is a dashboard of where we are right now in terms of the business, and I'll just walk you through the elements of it. The icon on the left-hand side is our revenues. Now, we have rising revenues, steeply rising revenues actually, during 2020, and that's off the back of some good marketing effort and also COVID-19 activity, in particular in our raw material side of the business. In fact, in the first quarter of 2020 financial year, 2020-21 financial year, we booked more revenue than we did in the entire previous year. So our revenues are rising quite rapidly. And again, this is primarily coming from organisations that are using our products, Anteo brand products in particular, and some big customers such as Thomson who are ramping up quite quickly. We're of the belief that our revenues during the coming year will continue to rise at the same rate. We're quite confident of that. As a matter of fact, even yesterday we got quite a large order from a customer who's a regular customer who's ordering more regularly now and with bigger volumes, and we're seeing that phenomena happen across the board. We're also quite confident in the revenues rising during the next year because of the next icon along, which is our opportunity pipeline, which is increasing again quite rapidly. I mentioned in the opening that we had focused on agility and putting ourselves into a position to do good commercial business, and that has increased our opportunity pipeline. We'll go through some of the detail of that during the course of today. The third icon along is the addressable markets, and of course they are growing quite rapidly, especially in the point of care area, which has been heavily affected obviously by the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're seeing a very, very large rise in that market, but a commensurate rise in the lithium-ion battery market as well. So we're in 2 very, very good markets. Our cash position at the moment is good. We've been well supported by our shareholder base and others with 2 raises during the year that Jack mentioned in the AGM, and we see overhead coverage through the next 12 months quite easily, and so we're feeling comfortable that we're in a good position to capitalise on that position as well. During the course of the year, we've strengthened our IP position. We've got several patent applications that we're working on now, and of course we've been awarded some patents during the course of the year, the most notable one being the lithium-ion battery patent that we were awarded in the US, and that will strengthen our position in that market and also lead to further IP positions in other parts of the world. And lastly, we've expanded the development teams slightly on the back of the COVID-19 test, and we have been able to run the business at full operating capacity during the pandemic, and we've been able to really commit to the staff, and they have responded by giving us full utilisation way beyond what we expected them to do, and that's accelerated our activity and certainly the development of the COVID-19 test. So that's our business dashboard. We might go to the next slide now. Thanks, Lisa. This is our life sciences area, so we'll go through that in detail. Thank you, Lisa. We might just go to the next one. Okay, a little bit of dialogue about the lateral flow market. This is a slide similar to what we presented last year. And before the pandemic, we were tracking in the lateral flow market at a rate of around 8%, a capital annual growth rate, which is a healthy market to be in. But during the pandemic, we've seen a massive increase in that. There's some forecasts out there that we believe are credible that indicate that the lateral flow market will double in size in a very short period of time. We really don't have a lot of information about the potential rate of growth from the analysts because it's just simply not available. What we do know is that many of our competitive organisations have started to book revenues very quickly. They're taking forward orders for their products quickly, and that continues. And they've reinvested in large capital sums to build up the manufacturing capability for lateral flow tests, and that's happening globally, including here in Brisbane with Illume, who have invested quite heavily in a facility here in Brisbane. So we see a very healthy market, and we believe it will continue, obviously, for at least the next 3 years, and we are aiming to be a fairly major player if we can in that market. All right, so that's our market view. Perhaps, Lisa, we can go to the next slide. Okay, a little bit about the key achievements during the course of 2020 on the life sciences side. Of course, the icon on the right-hand side was what we presented in the webinar, and it's a depiction of where we have landed with the life science business structure. 3 areas: assay development, raw materials, and assay services are the 3 separated but connected by integration and leverage. And at the centre of that world is our primary IP product, Anteo. On the outside, we've got conjugation lateral flow competency, which we're building very rapidly. And of course, we were successful early in the year with getting our ISO 13485 accreditation, which has helped us to become an assay, a legal assay developer in our own right. So just going through some of those areas, ISO 13485 again is the first point. The second point, I think Jack mentioned earlier in his speech, that we did complete a proof of concept assay for detection of sepsis earlier in the year, and that proof of concept is ready for us to capitalise on next year, and that's part of our plan. As I mentioned before, we've had a fairly large increase in our raw material sales, and we expect that to increase, a further increase during the course of the year. We've completed our first OEM Anteo activated particle product set with IMRA. We announced this program during the course of the year, and the team have worked diligently on that during this year, and we have been successful in delivering that product to IMRA, and that will be out in the market very shortly. We've developed a proof of concept for COVID-19 antigen rapid tests, and I think most people who are on the call are aware of that. We're about to go into clinical trials in December, and if successful, which we believe it will be, we'll be continuing on our process to bring that to market in the first quarter of 2021. We've successfully trialled a proof of concept for a COVID-19 flu A, flu B multiplex test. There was always some conjecture whether this would work or not, and we have tested it, and it does work very successfully. And we will be developing that multiplex test straight after the COVID-19 standalone test, which we'll bring to market in the first quarter of next year. We've established a strong position in the vaccine industry. It started off with a dialogue around Luminex and the coating of Luminex beads with Anteo, and that has led us to several conversations in the industry that we believe that will flourish and continue. We have a clear, very clear proposition for the industry around Luminex and the QC testing in the vaccine industry, and of course with the vaccine industry reportedly getting closer towards commercialisation, QC testing will be required at scale, and we think we are well positioned to add some value to that process. Finally, we've laid the foundation for an assay services business. We believe our ISO 13485 capability and our conjugation and lateral flow competency can be leveraged into a services business, which will be focused on cash flow. And if we had the time to do it, we would have started that a bit earlier, but things have got in the way with the COVID-19 focus, and we're going to start that process late this year, and we plan to bring that business online in 2021. So they're the key achievements for the life sciences business. Lisa, we might go to the next slide, please. So this slide depicts our differentiator in the market for high sensitivity detection, and this of course is a feature of our COVID-19 antigen rapid test. Now the differentiator is two factors, a europium-based particle or a europium particle, which gives high fluorescence readout, and that is commonly available in the marketplace. We coat that europium particle with Anteo. So the combination of an Anteo and europium particle provides the basis for very high sensitivity. To date, well, not to date, but probably permanently, we think, no other COVID-19 antigen test will have this combination. There are a couple of tests in the market that use europium, and they have good sensitivity. None of them have the Anteo factor, which gives a very high sensitivity. So we think we believe and we know that we will have a very unique place in the COVID-19 antigen test market because of the combination of these two factors. Other areas that we have key differentiation in the use of these two technologies is indicated on the slide: consistent and gentle binding. The binding technology is very consistent. It's able to be reproduced quite readily. It's a very simple conjugation. The capture method using this combination is good and consistent and relatively simple. On the other side, with the europium, there's a very high dynamic signal range and intensity. So the use of the reader enables us to capture the signal very well. We've got consistent and reliable results. And also we can use the platform for a quantitative detection, which we might do in the future, but this type of technology is probably more applicable to the sepsis test. But again, the technology offers that to us, and we get quite an improved lower limit of detection range because of the sensitivity that we are able to produce. Down the bottom there, we've got proven and tested stability in the product. We've tested it up to 1 year, and it is very stable in storage for up to 1 year. It's very easy to scale up and manufacture batch-to-batch consistency. So the combination of all those factors give Anteo activated europium a very key differentiator, which is flowing through into our COVID-19 antigen rapid test. Thank you. I'm just going to take some water here. This is why you swap it to the next slide. Thank you. This slide is an update on where we are with the development of the COVID-19 antigen test, and we are on track for delivery. When we said we were going to deliver in the first quarter of next year, we are in phase 3, and phase 3 is the most difficult phase, probably one of the longer ones, a very intensive workload right now around phase 3 as we head into clinical trials. And the clinical trial area, of course, requires us to have a design lock-in, and we are literally a week away, I think, perhaps a couple of more days, past a week, before getting design lock-in. And we were heading to clinical trials, as I mentioned, in December. Phase 4, which is the production area, we've actually started work on phase 4. There is some crossover there. We're working with manufacturers now to ascertain the detail of how a manufacturing scale-up will work, and that will be a prelude to us signing some contracts and locking in those manufacturers before the first quarter of next year. Phase 5 is the last area, the market launch and regulatory approval process. We have registered with the TGA. They have approved our clinical trial process. They are aware we are coming, and we will be putting in our regulatory approval documents early in the new year for them to begin their assessment. Okay, Lisa, thank you. Next slide. Okay, so the next 12 months for the life sciences business is going to be very intensive. As I mentioned before, we have put ourselves into a position where we've got a fairly large pipeline of opportunity, and we are going to capitalise on all those opportunities if we can. I've also mentioned and shown you through the webinar today that we've got the business now split into 3 distinct areas so that we can assign resources properly and assess profitability of those 3 areas and really projectise some of the effort that we need to go through. So I'll go through the 3 areas quickly in detail. On the assay development side, column on the left-hand side, of course we will finish the COVID-19 antigen test, and we're going to extend that test into saliva, so into saliva sampling. So one of the use cases that has been prevalent in the market has been whether the test can be used more easily using a saliva sample rather than a nasal swab. It has been dependent on achieving a certain level of sensitivity, and we have achieved that level of sensitivity. So we will be working diligently very soon to turn the test into a saliva sample-based test. Separately, as I mentioned before, we will be completing the commercialisation of the Flu A, Flu B multiplex test, and we'll be bringing that to market directly after the standalone test. We have a sepsis test which we announced to the market earlier in the year. That's a proof of concept stage. Our plan for next year is to commercialise that test, bring it through as part of the platform or the suite of tests that we have. And there's a fairly large body of work required to do that, and we will begin that after the COVID-19 test. There's other opportunities that we're eyeing off in the market for different types of tests. We are agile. We've purposely made ourselves agile. The market will move, and whilst the market moves and we remain agile, there's the potential that we could see a market opportunity and move directly towards that, which is basically what happened in 2020. And we'll start some new projects accordingly. On the raw material side, the middle column, I've asked the team to focus on investment in getting customer knowledge and problem sets. We have been traditionally an organisation that has advertised the product, and people have bought it quite readily, but we've never really understood in detail the detailed problem sets that they're trying to achieve with the use of the product. So we're focusing on that now, and we're getting some really good results, which is turning into leverage into assay development and turning into leverage on our services side of the business as well. So we'll continue to do that. We'll have a particular focus on the vaccine industry. We've already started that. We've got good discussions going on in that area now, and we announced in several of our quarterlies, I think, the relationship that we have with the Serum Institute of India. Subsequent to that or establishing that relationship, the Serum Institute of India have become very, very heavily involved with the vaccine program with Oxford, and so their business is ramping up, and accordingly, the intensity of our discussion and our potential involvement with their program has ramped up as well. We've decided that we've got a better opportunity to leverage our point of contact and our revenue base in some key accounts out of Anteo. I mentioned to you before that we're seeing a ramp up in the level of sales in some particular accounts, particularly around the Luminex area, and we will go to market next year with a focus on attempting to increase our footprint not only in the Anteo area but in the area of delivering services to those key accounts, which is the next point. The last point there is we will continue to work on our Anteo activated particle range. We've done a set of products with IMRA, which are in the market now, and that was a very good process. IMRA have indicated that they would like to continue that with a different range, and we're looking at that opportunity now, as we are looking at other opportunities for introducing Anteo activated particles where they make sense for us. The European area is an area that we've got particular attention on, so we're looking at that area closely and what we might do with that going forward. Okay, on the right-hand side, assay services. Approach the market from a problem-solving perspective. I think we've changed our bias and the way we go to market, and we are looking at our major clients from a problem-solving perspective. We've got ISO 13485. We've got a very good set of QMS processes around that. They can be leveraged to offer services to other businesses. And we can leverage off our own assay development success. The first assay that we will bring to the market is the COVID-19 antigen test, and we can leverage all that experience that we learned along the way and offer that to clients as well. Speed of execution is paramount. We know that from our own experience, and therefore the market for assay services is looking for that as well. And if we're successful in going to market around the combination of speed to market and leveraging our own success, we believe that we can generate some short-term cash flows which will help us with our reinvestment profile going forward. Okay, Lisa, that's that slide, so we'll move on to the next one if we can.
Okay, thank you, Derek. If anyone would like to ask a question, please press the Join Queue button on the top right-hand side of your screen and you will be placed in a queue. So join a Q&A queue. We do have our first person, and that is Stephen. Stephen, you've got your audio and your video muted. There you go, Stephen. Thank you. No, your audio is still muted there. Stephen, top right-hand side of your screen, just unclick your audio there.
It says
Perfect.
It's on.
Yep, you're talking
Okay.
now. Perfect.
Okay, thanks, Derek. Thanks for all the work you've done this year and success we've had. I just wanted to ask if you could give us an update on the AnteoTech testing. You reported in the webinar and online about the other testing, but there's been nothing on the AnteoTech. Could you give us an update on that?
Yeah, so we have sent strips to Genedex, and we've sent them a reader, and they've been focused on a few other things as well as our validation testing, which we asked them to do. So their process has been slower, and we are a little bit disappointed about the length of time they are taking to do our validation testing. But we've been in communication with them recently, and their validation testing process is about to recommence, and we expect some results from them in the next few weeks. That should really, we think, revalidate the work that we've already done with Operon. So we're not too worried about the delay, because we have done our validation with Operon, but we're very keen to get something from Genedex as well.
Thank you, Derek. Stephen, he's turned his video off again. So next, we actually don't have anybody else in the queue. So if anybody else would like to ask a question, again, join Q&A queue button on the top right-hand side of your screen, please. Okay, so next we have Charles. Go ahead, please, Charles. No, Richard. We've got Richard now. Go ahead, please, Richard.
Hi, Derek. Again, thank you for the presentation today. It's very useful. My question relates to the point of care factors, and particularly historically, point of care has been a sort of a yes-no platform. Either you are pregnant or you're not pregnant. Anteo is looking to bring a quantitative nature to point of care testing. How important is that to point of care testing, and how does that distinguish Anteo from other companies in the point of care field? Okay, great question. So I think in terms of differentiator, in any test, whether it be quantitative or not, or whether the quantitative aspects are used or not, the sensitivity must be high. The higher the sensitivity, the more accurate the test, generally. For the COVID-19 standalone antigen test, we have the opportunity to use the platform and the reader to provide us with a yes-no answer on positive or negative, but also, because of the sensitivity, we can actually provide an indeterminate answer as well. And that indeterminate answer is where there might be a slight crossover between the detection of a very low viral load with a negative test. In other words, if there is a slight crossover and an indeterminate output on whether the person is positive or negative, we can send that person off to do a PCR test or a much more accurate test
to determine if they actually carry the antigen and are spreading the disease or not. So that's one aspect, I think, that we have as a differentiator because of our sensitivity. In terms of quantification itself, quantitative tests offer the ability to put an algorithm into a multiplex scenario. And this might come to fruition again. It's an area that we're looking at, the mixture between a antigen test, which detects the presence of the disease, and an antibody test, which detects the reaction of the body to the disease. And the combination of those two tests in a quantitative platform may allow an algorithm to determine exactly the point of the cycle that a patient is on. And so we are looking at that opportunity as a separate exercise, because we did build an antibody test along the way with our antigen test. And there's a possibility that we could build a quantitative test that includes an antibody response. The other area that we know that we can build a quantitative test is the sepsis test that we have. And the sepsis test that we have built has 3 biomarkers. And depending on the level of response from each of those biomarkers, an algorithm will determine the need for a clinical response in that particular patient. And as we know, sepsis is a disease that captures the patient's vital systems very quickly. And if there isn't a fast clinical response, the people often get very close to death or die. And so this algorithm and the use of point of care tests that determines the required clinical need very quickly in a quantitative format can provide a very rapid clinical response. And that, again, will be a differentiator of ours going to the market with the sepsis test.
Just one follow-up question. Are you aware of any other players in the market that have this capability now?
Quantitative testing is not unique to us. There are reader companies, obviously, that offer quantitative testing and are based on a fluorescent particle. So that is not unique to us. What is unique to us is what I mentioned before, the level of sensitivity that we can attain in a quantitative scenario that provides a better response, put into an algorithm, again, which we would build and are building, and that will provide a better clinical decision support mechanism for clinicians to make a decision. And again, the scenarios that we see is what I mentioned, potential for an antibody antigen test, maybe even a flu A, flu B multiplex test could have an algorithm in it, but definitely the antigen antibody test, and definitely the 3 biomarkers on the sepsis test that we already have.
Thank you. Good answers. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Derek. Our next question is from Charles Lin. Charles has actually got his video muted there, which is fine, but your audio is fine. Go ahead, please, Charles.
Hi, Derek. Just have a question about the TGA and FDA approval process. So if we were to, for example, create a test for a different reader, or, if COVID has mutated and we need to create another test, does it need to go through the entire approval process again?
Generally, yes. A different reader is a different product offering, and so most regulatory authorities will require a new approval to be taken for that particular test. Having said that, the bulk of the work that is required is in clinical testing. And so, depending on how you build your project, if you anticipate that you might use different readers, it'd be well within your reason to use those readers in clinical trials, so that you can offer the variations of the trial up to the FDA or TGA at the appropriate moment. What we have done is focus on the Axon platform, and we will go to clinical trial with that platform, and we will go through TGA approval with that platform. And our intention is to take that platform through to CE, which is the European Regulatory Authority, and also FDA for emergency use. But in parallel, we're getting such interest in the test in Europe and the US that there's a potential that we may get into a discussion shortly around licensing, or actually providing the test to other players in a scenario where they become the legal manufacturer. And in that scenario, they may choose their own reader, and that would require them to do a separate FDA approval for their reader. So all those machinations and market opportunities are playing out right now, and at the end of the day, it's possible that we may see multiple different regulatory approval regimes all using our test.
Yep. And are you sort of confident that Axon can sort of fulfill the the devices to everyone that wants the COVID test?
Yes, so we are. They have a very strong manufacturing capability based here in Melbourne, and they do offshore some of their capability to build. We have done due diligence already on that capability and the ability to ramp that up in the scenario where we see a good demand for our test, and we believe that we will have good demand for our test. And we've also asked them to showcase to us a couple of what-if scenarios. And a couple of what-if scenarios include the scenario where you Axon are telling us, you think we need a particular level of number of readers in the market, and let's just say that doubles. What are we going to do in that scenario? And they have come back to us and shown us their plans for that, and we're happy for that, with those plans. It includes licensing out the manufacturing capability very quickly, turn on a dime sort of scenario, and also ramping up their offshore operations so that they can fulfill that demand in quick time. So we are confident that in the scenario where we get huge demand for the readers, that they can respond quite quickly.
Thanks, Derek.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Our next question is from Gareth. Go ahead, please, Gareth.
Thanks, Derek. My question's in relation to the contract negotiations with Merck, and if you can give us an update on those.
Okay, so as you know, we've got a great relationship with Merck, and have had for a long time. The current focus of our negotiations with Merck are around the supply of their particle for our test, and we're going to sign that off in the coming week. We've been in negotiations with them around T's and C's, and so we're going to sign that off, and we will have a direct relationship with Merck around the supply of that particle. So that's a good progression for us, and Merck are very happy with that position as well. We have had discussions with them earlier in the year, MAU around bringing in a activated European particle version to Merck, and that still is in discussion. We've delayed it slightly because for a couple of reasons. Both Merck and AnteoTech got very busy on COVID-19 responses, and the level of effort that we would require to bring those particles to market, we just haven't been able to put the resources to in the time frame that we originally anticipated because of our agile pivot and direct our resources to other. So those discussions are still in play, and we will come back to them soon when we have resources to provide.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, Derek, we don't have any further questions in the queue, so we'll end the Q&A session now.
Okay, we'll move to energy, shall we?
Thank you. Thank you.
Advance on from there. So this is we'll deep dive the energy area now, and we'll start off by taking a quick look again at the market for lithium-ion batteries. So again, I direct your attention to a recent webinar that we did. Some detail around our market point of view is in that document. But in summary, on the left-hand side, we see that following on from Jack's conversation this morning, the lithium-ion battery market is very buoyant. In excess of $100 billion turnover per year predicted in 2030 from the Aberdeen report, and that's just in the EV market. So the EV market is becoming much stronger, or forecast to become much stronger, but the entire market is stronger as well. So we're seeing a very good market forming for us going forward into 2030 at about 9%. Now on the right hand side there's a couple of graphs, and I think I should talk you through just in a little bit of detail. The one at the top there is a depiction of the take-up rate of lithium-ion batteries, being the black area on the left, the silicon-based lithium-ion market being the blue area in the middle, And on the right-hand side, a future technology, which in some ways is a little bit, there's a little bit of conjecture around it, but it is being worked on, which is solid state. So the lithium-ion battery market in the black area has already been used quite prevalently and in full swing, but it is forecast to decline and be replaced by advanced or silicon-based lithium-ion battery components, which we are working on from about 2021, 2022 and going forward. And the technology horizon that we see for silicon-based lithium-ion batteries extends out to beyond 2035. So that's really our technology horizon out to 2035 and beyond. So in terms of timing into the entry of the market for silicon-based lithium-ion battery components, we think we have that timing about right, and full marks to the board last year, 2019, 2018, when they took a look at the prospects for the market and decided to focus on this area, because now that's starting to come to fruition with a market that is becoming much more buoyant at a time when we're getting closer to bringing some of our products to market as well. So on the bottom, there is, again, just a slice from the webinar that we did earlier in the last couple of weeks that depicts the use of silicon components in anode production going forward. And this is quite exciting for us because the capital annual growth rate of silicon-based components is around 34%, which, again, Jack mentioned in his opening, from now until 2030. So the area that we are working in, silicon-based components, is becoming a much bigger area of the total anode market. And if we continue down the path that we're continuing on, we should see addressable market ramping up quite rapidly in the next few years. So they're the messages there. We might advance on from that one. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, this slide is just a reminder of our strategy for our energy division, focused on the lithium-ion battery. On the left-hand side, where our aim is to become a material supplier to producers of enhanced lithium-ion anodes, and that position could take a number of different forms, being a straight material supplier or via a licensed deal eventually, or however it manifests itself. But whatever it is the exploitation of the IP to supply into existing markets using AnteoTech, AnteoX, AnteoLink as the primary vehicles for doing that. The centre area is to develop applications for the enhancement of silicon composites and binder systems, and that's what we are doing now. We've reported on that progress, and we'll show a little bit in a minute how that is progressing as well. So we're investing in that area, and that is becoming a core part of our offering. And on the right-hand side, we want to continue that process and attempt to exploit the outputs of that process via international collaborations. And that is a focus area that we've taken on, again, last year with 3, increasing to 9 collaborators right now. So those 3 pillars are the core of our strategy going forward, all leading to the development of an enhanced lithium-ion battery in the marketplace, facilitated by our work and our achievements. So the next slide, thanks, Lisa. Again, this is a take from the webinar that we recently held, and it's a depiction of the commercialisation timeline or process, if you like, around how we think we will go to market and where we think we will get traction in that market around our development. The first area is the cross-link additive area, which is on the left-hand side there, and we've been developing that. We pivoted towards that earlier in the year, late last year, as an area that we believe that we could add a significant value proposition, increase the electrochemical performance of binders that are already in the market. So in other words, large organisations selling binders to the lithium-ion battery market now, add a cross-link additive, lift the electrochemical performance, you've got an enhanced value proposition, and the combination of the 2 organisations' products can achieve that, and therefore we've got a market entry point for ourselves. So in the recent webinar, we showcased that work and displayed a 21% increase in one of our collaborators' binders using a cross-link additive, a 21% increase in electrochemical performance. And since that webinar, just a week ago, we have done a full presentation of those results to that collaborator, and they were exceedingly well received. The collaborator is very enthused, and we are progressing to validate those results in their hands quickly and moving on to next steps around how we can work together in the market. So that was a very pleasing result out of that process. Next area is the advanced binder, second product, which is a binder basically cross-linked, put into the market. It might be our binder, it probably would be. We're working on a process to develop that product. The brand name is Anteo, and the results that we're getting out of the cross-linked additive are adding to the development of that program of work as well. We've been quite overt about announcing our results in the silicon active material market, and we've developed a very good silicon composite. The stage that we're at right now is around cycle stability and generation of porosity in that product, and that work is continued. We'll show you a little bit about that in a minute. But also we're looking at microsilicon based on an articulation of our observation of where the market might be heading. So we're looking at microsilicon as well as an active material that we might start working on in earnest during the next year or so. The final area is the anode system, and we've been doing a lot of work on that, bringing different combinations of anode systems together. We will continue to do that in the coming year. It is the final step in the process, bringing all the previous steps together. And if we can bring an anode system that works and provides a higher electrochemical performance, we will be successful, and we believe we will be in due course of time to deliver a cheaper and smaller and lighter lithium-ion battery out of the process that we're currently undertaking. So that's that slide, Lisa. Thank you. So this slide is just a re-articulation. Just takes a water here. Based on some feedback that we got from the market about our collaboration network. You can see down the bottom, we've got the 9 collaborators. And I won't go through that in detail, but again, you can have a look at that to see what type of organisations they are. They're prevalent organisations in the lithium-ion battery market, and we're quite proud to have had the opportunity to increase the number to 9. We did say at the webinar time that we've got a 10th coming on board, and we will have a 10th coming on board very, very shortly. Documents are being finalised, so we'll announce that in due course. So we will have 10, and so they're all organisations that are very active in the silicone active material and binder markets for the anode, and we're working with them, and they all primarily have products that are in that market now. So a great opportunity for us. Up the top, 7 collaborators are engaged with the composite project, and 6 at the moment are engaged with the cross-linked additive project. So we've got plenty of work on, and you know, as I mentioned in the webinar, a lot of our work up until now has been around coordination and profiling the different experiments, etc. So that work continues, and we will be announcing results of avenues that we've pursued with individual collaborators in due course. Okay, that's that slide. Thank you. So achievements during the course of this year for the energy division, and again we split these into 3 areas. The first area is in the industry network. We've increased our collaboration network from 3 to 9. Apologies for the typo on the next point. It should be together rather than separated, but 6 of those are in, on the cross-linked additive, and 7 are in the silicon composite project as detailed on the previous slide. In the middle, the cross-linked additive concept was developed earlier in the year, and that was a big step for us to actually take a step out and pivot to focus on a product that we believe that we can bring to market quicker, and I think that was a good decision. We did a generation 1 version of those of that product and shipped those out to several collaborators and got some results back. You know, recently we've demonstrated that 21% improvement in one of the collaborators' binders that is currently on the market, and that's providing us a good advancement for a potential commercial discussion with them in the next period. On the right-hand side, on the silicon active materials, again, first generation was successfully evaluated by collaborators 1 and 3, and we reported with those results. So we're very pleased about that. We're currently in Gen 2 program for the silicon composite, targeting cycling stability. One of the largest problems for the anode industry using silicon, as we know, is the expansion, and the cycling stability is affected. So we're working on methods and approaches, including coating and porosity, to bring that under control. And separately, as I mentioned before, we're looking at microsilicon, coated microsilicon as an alternative, and we might go there in the near future. We've independently validated the particle specifications and the capacity attributes of the Gen 1 composite, and that was done by collaborator 1 and 3, and we're getting very good results from the Gen 2 in our own in-house electrochemical performance, and we'll be introducing that to the collaboration network very shortly. Okay, Lisa, that's that slide. We might move on again. Okay, the energy development program for the next year. So Q2 2021 is the September to December, and it flows on from there. So it's financial year on that graph. But matching the first point around the cross-linker additive is matching the cross-linker additive specific binder chemistries with collaborators, and this is a large body of work. The chemistry is very involved, and so we have to do a lot of analysis work around matching the binder chemistries with our cross-linker additive chemistry before we do the testing. So that's an ongoing process. We'll do a lot more of that during the course of the next year. Then we're going through a process of fine-tuning all that, and that facilitates a process of integration with the collaborators. And if that's successful, which it has been with the one that I mentioned, the 21% lift, we've got a very good proposition for the owner of that binder to put our cross-linker additive into the market. We're progressing the relationships at commercial level, and we are aiming at an initial low-volume supply of cross-linker additive to collaborators, and we target our first commercial transaction on that front in this forthcoming year. We believe that we've got a good shot at that. We've progressed our cross-linker additive knowledge, how to use it with the different collaborators' binders well enough that we're getting more confident that we can cut a commercial deal for that in the next year. On the silicon active materials front, we'll be looking at refining the composite structure and composition to enhance cycling stability, as I mentioned. No organisation has done that successfully yet at a commercial level. We're confident in doing that. We've spent a lot of time and effort building our silicon composite based on Anteo coat, and we've had success at every stage. We're getting good results with the cycling stability in the second generation, and we will be bringing that to the collaboration network shortly for validation. Protective coatings in general is another area that we're interested in. This comes back to the microsilicon area. We believe that Anteo coat has that attribute anyway, and how it's used in different forms, we will head towards or pivot towards based on market need. The market that we see at the moment is in microsilicon, and again, we will start to focus on that area going forward. On the silicon anode system, our first silicon composite and cross-linker binder anode prototype has been developed, and we've done some early testing in that, and that's encouraging. We will be evaluating the feasibility and business case for a limited microsilicon anode system, as I mentioned, and that's a pivot area that we are looking at very seriously now, and we'll pivot towards that if that business case becomes successful. And our target for the silicon anode system, in whatever form, using a microsilicon or with a silicon composite, is in excess of 800 milliamps per gram at full cell capacity. We think we're well in hand to achieve that during the course of this financial year, and we're getting good results already. In fact, we think we will possibly go beyond that this year. Our target earlier that we mentioned was 1,000, or that's the threshold target for the industry. And we believe we've got a good shot at least the first prototype in that range during the next year or so. So we're making good progress, and a lot of work going on in in the energy development program, and we're again hopeful that we can get some commercial transactions for at least the cross-linker additive during the course of the next 12 months. Thank you, Lisa. We'll move on to the next slide. Okay. Right. Well, actually, yeah, we'll do the summary. So, in terms of the business, sorry, yeah, we will advance. Sorry, I'm confusing you. Yeah, we will advance to the next slide. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, in terms of objectives for the next 12 months for the business, our strong focus, short-term focus, is on the point-of-care assay for the COVID-19 antigen rapid test, as I mentioned. We've got a great opportunity there. The market is for that test is very, very large, and we will focus on that area as a significant step up in the business when successful, and that is one of the primary areas that we're working on right now. We'll also capitalise on the pipeline of opportunities that surround our capability and profile, and we've been quite overt about the types of opportunities that we're seeing, both in the raw material side, on the life sciences business, our connection to the vaccine industry, our ability to develop some services business, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll be focusing on those opportunities as we go forward quickly from here. We're seeing increased sales in the raw material business. We expect to add to that with increased sales from the COVID-19 test and others during the course of the next 12 months. And so our acceleration of revenues, we believe, will continue. We seek to build our assay services business quickly and get that generating revenue as well. And of course, as I mentioned, the raw material business is already increasing in revenue. So our revenue outlook is good, and we're confident that we can keep the level of trajectory of increase going for the next 12 months. On the energy side, as I mentioned to you, we've got great commercialisation opportunity for the binder additive, the CLA AnteoTech. And again, that's focused on leveraging the current collaboration network. We've had a very good discussion with the first of those, and that organisation is very keen to continue to the next step. And on the silicon active material side, we are following market trends and looking at that very closely. We're getting great results from our Gen 2 silicon composite, and in terms of electrochemical performance and cycling stability, and we will continue that work. And we're also looking at other things like microsilicon. So then the primary focus areas for the business going forward. And again, we believe that the business is very strong, much stronger, we think, than last year. And we've got a great portfolio of fairly large opportunities. And our work during the last year in development has put us in a great position for the next 12 months to do some fairly significant commercial transactions. And that's what we will be focusing on from here on in. Okay, Lisa, thank you.
Thank you, Derek. So we will go to questions. We'll just stop sharing the slide. Okay, if anybody would like to ask a question, please press Join Q&A queue on the top right-hand side of your screen. You'll be placed in a queue and I'll introduce you. So just select Join Q&A queue at the top right-hand side. Okay, we do have a question, and that is from Richard. Go ahead, please, Richard.
Derek, thank you again for that summary. My question revolves around the potential for improvement in the anode compared with other elements of the battery. Anteo is looking at pretty well doubling the capacity on the anode in the next 12 months. What other elements in a battery would actually have to be improved to enable that to become fully effective? Is the ability already there for battery power storage to be improved 100%? In other words, improve the range of a battery 100%, or are there other elements that also have to be improved?
Well, the operation of the anode itself is dependent on the issues that we've spoken about in detail, including the cycling stability capability. So we have to overcome the cycling stability connected with the expansion of the silicon for the anode to deliver a better electrochemical performance. So that's the first challenge. Now, assuming that we can do that, and we believe that we can, we will significantly increase the lithium-ion battery's capacity to hold and discharge electrochemical performance. So the other side of that equation is on the cathode side, and the cathode has to perform in a similar way, or offer a similar attributes for the overall lithium-ion battery to improve its energy efficiency. Now, there's already technologies in play on the cathode side that enhance the lithium-ion battery performance, and those are areas that we're not involved with, and we don't seek to work in that area per se. But we know that we can join, or the lithium-ion battery component manufacturers can join the two technologies together, if you like, our technology on the anode side, others' technologies on the cathode side, to deliver the performance out of the entire lithium-ion battery that's required by the market. Traditionally, the problem has been the anode. The anode has never performed to the cycling capacity or the electrochemical performance capacity of the cathode. And that's why we decided to focus on the anode as a key differentiator.
Just follow, do we know at what stage the cathode becomes the rate limiting step? How much improvement can the cathode handle of the anode before it becomes an issue?
We do know the answer to that question, but we're not handling the cathode side. So I'm going to direct that question to Manuel Wieser, and I will ask him to liaise with you directly on the answer to that question, because he is the expert, or has the greatest amount of knowledge on the cathode side.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. We don't have anybody else in the queue, Derek, but I'll just check if anybody else would like to ask a question. There we go. We have Jeff. Thanks, Jeff.
Hi, Derek. In regards to the sepsis test, what sort of testing is going to be required for that? What sort of approval? What sort of potential funding we might get? And I guess, what's the time to market? So just a little bit around the sepsis test and a little bit more detail.
Okay. So what we know about sepsis is that it's a very prevalent disease globally, or very, very prevalent condition globally. It actually, unfortunately, kills more people than COVID-19 does. So the mortality rate around sepsis is much, much higher than COVID-19. So from a clinical gap perspective, there is a very large market for rapid response testing for sepsis, because the disease or the condition advances on the patient very, very rapidly. In other words, a patient can show up with a symptom, and within a matter of hours, the condition can overcome their vital organs, and they become very sick and often die. And so the rapid test perspective in providing clinicians with decision support around intervention is what's needed. So no one to date has really provided a very good rapid test for sepsis, and we developed ours based on 3 biomarkers which we believe provide the indicators that provide that decision support. So if we were to go to market with those 3 biomarkers successfully, we would have a completely differentiated position that no one else has headed yet. To do that, we have to go through development work similar to what we've done with the COVID-19 test, from proof of concept right the way through to TGA approval. And that program of work is similar in size to what we've done with the COVID-19 test. In fact, the technical side is slightly more complicated, or it is more complicated, because it's a complex multiplex test. The 3 biomarkers on their own are complex, and the algorithm required to make it quantitative is something that we will need to liaise with the clinical community around to make it work properly. So that body of work is reasonably large. We're not going to turn that on, quickly. We have to devote resources to it. We've set up relationships to do that, most notably in the US and locally here with clinical organisations that are offering to help us. What they have seen is a very sensitive test for the biomarkers, and they're very impressed by that. and are willing to work with us now to develop that clinical response in terms of the algorithms and the development of the test itself. So my answer to the question is it's not a small body of work. It's something that we need to focus on next year. We will do that when we free the resources up from the COVID-19 test in the first quarter, and we will start that development. If successful, we will have a test in the market that's not headed. There's no other test that will have those 3 biomarkers in existence at the level of sensitivity with an algorithm that affects a disease that kills more people than COVID-19. So it's a clear market opportunity, and we'll pursue it with vigor on that basis.
Right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Derek. We don't have any further questions. Once more, if anybody would like to ask a question, join the Q&A button on the top right-hand side of your screen. Looks like that's all our questions, Derek.
Excellent. So
we've just had one come in. Sorry, Gareth.
Yeah.
Gareth, you've actually got your video muted there. If you'd like to put it on, or you don't have to. You can go ahead and talk.
Hey, Derek, how you going? Thanks very much for that. It's been very insightful. I must have one question with the energy side of things. Just wanted to know if Anteo had been working with silicon that's been processed or unprocessed, if we can elaborate on that at all.
Well, the answer to that question is both. Our silicon composite that we have built has been built on the use of nanosilicon, and so the process of building nanosilicon is quite unique. So that's what I would call a processed silicon to produce that particle, which we then combine into an aggregate, which is the composite, which is about micron size. So it fits well with other materials in the anodes, such as graphite or carbon. So that's one area. But we've also been testing and using carbon-coated silicon, both in the nanoscale and the micron scale. So again, that's a process that's a processed silicon. It's quite prevalent. Carbon-coated silicon has certain attributes around protection that are good. It protects the silicon from exposure to electrolyte, which is what you want in an anode. So that's been a good process, and we've done a lot of learning around that. And thirdly, we are looking, as I mentioned, and working with silicon that is coated with AnteoTech. So the virtues of AnteoTech, not only from a binding perspective, but from a coating perspective, not indifferent to what we do on the point of care side for coating particles for conjugation. Coating can be used for coating silicon as well, and put into the anode for protective purposes, and also electrochemical performance purposes and porosity purposes. So all those things have come into play during our development program. I've got to tell you, it's a very detailed science, and it takes a lot of time and effort to work the parameters to make these things work effectively, and then we have to put all those parameters through electrochemical performance regimes, which again takes time. So very, very detailed program of work, but I think I'm answering the question by saying yes, all forms of silicon, both natural or processed in terms of its size and coatings, is what we've used.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I had one other. My presentation just cut out earlier, but going back to the COVID quickly.
Yeah.
In the last announcement or the webinar, there was some discussion about the lower limit of detection within the results on the announcement.
Yes.
And you mentioned we're probably a week or just over a week away from locking in the parameters. Is that something that's been heavily worked on and confident that we can have that, I guess, defined?
Yes. So yeah, the answer to your question, are we confident that we can have it defined? Yes. Have we worked on it? Almost constantly. Our entire existence at the moment is, I'm smiling because I've got Charlie Wang here in the room with me. But our entire existence at the moment is working on that lower limit of detection. So where we are right now is that we've got validated results on our ability to detect the viral antigen at extremely low levels. And we are sorting through that detection level and working out ways to sort them out from negative samples. So to paint that picture for you, our sensitivity is so high that we're detecting viral antigen at very low levels, which is very, very close to a negative sample. And so the lower limit of detection has to dissect that. And so we are working on our algorithm and our methods for doing that based on the work that we're doing with Operon and others around the testing. We will have that finished very, very shortly. Our design lock-in is a week away, and we're going to put that lower limit of detection position into our clinical trials, which we will start in December. And coming out of that clinical trial, we will have some results that will reflect the sensitivity and specificity of the test in terms of percentages against the sample set that was tested. So typically you would see from the other players them coming out with like a 92% or 90% sensitivity rate and 88 or 90% specificity rate. We will be doing the same after our clinical trial, and we believe our numbers will be much better. So, so that's the process that we will be going through. Stay tuned on that, and everybody will be keen to see those results. There's the potential that we might make some announcements before that, based on the validation work that we're doing in Europe and the US, and that they are head-to-head trials with other big players, and that work is happening today, right now. And so, if we're allowed to, we will make those announcements as well.
All right, thank you very much.
No problems.
Thank you, Derek. We do have Adam. Adam, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, Derek.
Adam, I know you've unmuted. That's fine. Thank you, Adam.
Hi, Derek. Thanks for the presentation and certainly what has been an exciting few months, particularly in the points of care business. I'm just interested in, in your position, what are you personally most excited for over the next 6 months in both the energy and points of care business?
Well, great question. Thank you. When I joined this company, the first thing that I saw was, the company had a self-imposed mandate to, apply its IP, its technology, and its people and capability to the global challenges of our time. And, it could have been a company that was working in an area that, was interesting, but not, not adding too much value to, global events. The company itself is right in the middle of adding a significant contribution to the control of COVID-19. And we're right in that game, and that is a very high profile position. And we have the belief and the results to date to prove that our contribution to the control of COVID-19 is going to be very worthwhile. And we believe that we've got a very strong belief in that, and that motivates us to do the work that we're doing, which I've got to tell you is a lot at the moment, quite hard work. On the energy side, the same thing. At the start of the year, Manuel Wieser and I got on planes every 5 minutes to go and try and expand the collaboration network. That wasn't an easy task, but again, we got great hearings from the collaboration network, and the main players in the market, they accepted our position quite readily, and they have agreed with us to work with us in very detailed ways. And that gave me great encouragement as a person coming into the company that we are going to be successful. The work that we're doing has an immediate impact on transport, lifestyle, and global warming. There couldn't be a stronger position for us to take in solving a big problem in the global markets today, and that really motivates me, and I know it motivates the energy team to do the work that they're doing. So the two sides of the business, very strong propositions, very strong commercial opportunity, very strong in terms of the results that it's delivering to industry and society. Couldn't be in a better place.
Great, thanks, Derek. Certainly an exciting time to be a shareholder, sir. Thank you again.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Derek. We do have Michael for a question. Go ahead, please, Michael.
Good afternoon, Derek. Two questions, please, if I have the opportunity. Firstly, the demand for rapid testing, does that change at all from your point of view with the imminent news, or with the news about the vaccine that's been that's quite imminent with Pfizer?
Great question. Yeah, I'm glad you asked. The answer to that question is we would never have started this COVID-19 antigen project as a small company with only 6 people to work on that test versus the competitors who have hundreds if we thought the vaccine, which was always going to come, was going to slow down the market. It would have been just a bad commercial move for us. The business case that we put to the board and the discussion that we put to the board was that irrespective of the vaccine, even in its most optimistic timelines, the need for testing will continue for at least 3 years from now. And that's because most governments or most clinical organisations have a multi-pronged approach to controlling the disease. They have the vaccine, which we hope, will be rolled out soon. That will certainly give us some confidence that we can go back to our normal lives. And I've got to tell you, we want that as well. But we know that it will take some time for that to occur, and therefore there is a real need for rapid testing in the market, both from a health support and economic support profile in terms of screening people to get on planes and to get on cruise ships and to go into buildings, etc., in a world where COVID-19 still exists. And so we see a market that's continued unabated, despite the fact that vaccine trials have been going on during our development period, and now they are becoming more confident that they're going to bring them to market. And we are confident that our market for our test has continued on unabated. In addition to that, we have taken, again, a more broader perspective that, if the vaccines come onto the market and they completely control the disease, which, again, I think is unlikely in the short term, that we will take a position to help the vaccine market to do what they need to bring those products to market. And we have deliberately gone out and talked to organisations that are involved in the vaccine production, like the Serum Institute of India, to apply AnteoBind to the QC testing process that will be required for those vaccines to be brought to the market. So we have a two-pronged play. We have an antigen test, which we believe has a very, very strong market, and certainly, by the way, so do all our competitors. And we will enter that market in the first quarter. And we have a vaccine play providing AnteoBind for the testing and the rollout of that test, which we believe, if successful, we will also have a massive market to address. So we are in good shape.
Go on.
I was just saying, I think we're in good shape in terms of a business and positioning.
Great answer. And just my second question relates to the saliva test. You touched on it earlier. Can you just elaborate as to where we're at with that particular test?
Yes. So we have completed our validation studies with Operon, and we've published those results to validate the very high sensitivity of the test. And that is the opening position that is required to even think about applying it to a saliva testing regime. Now, saliva itself carries a much lower viral load than nasal swabs. So to give you an example, if a person is infected heavily with COVID-19, the nasal swab will have a very high viral load count, but the same patient in a saliva sample will have a decreased antigen count within the sample. And therefore, you must have a very high sensitive test and be confident of that sensitivity to apply it to a saliva use case. Our process was to firstly make sure that we could develop a test that has very high sensitivity, and we did all that testing and development work based on a nasal swab. And what we have proven is that we are one of the highest in the market. We have got extremely high sensitivity from our test, and that gives us the confidence to move now to the saliva use case. What we're doing now is we're building saliva samples. COVID-19 positive saliva samples are not easy to get, especially in Australia. So we've been building samples around different regimes of making these things work in terms of artificial mucus, spike sampling, artificial mucus, etc., to do our development work and testing. And we have run those tests in their first wave, and they have been successful. The test actually works on a saliva sample. So we have got further work to do, and we will complete that work very shortly. But we are confident that we will have a test that will go through regulatory approval stages that uses saliva.
Great. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Derek. We don't have any further questions, so if you're happy, I'll end the Q&A session. Oh, no, Jeff's just popped up just as I went to end it. There you go,
Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Derek.
That's all right.
Probably just a question on the vaccine work. What's the potential end result of that, I guess? Is it likely that we'll get Anteo bind or some product on every vaccine produced, or is it more in just a testing element of it? Or because you say quality control constantly, but I'm just probably trying to expand on what that actually does mean.
Yeah, okay. So at this point, we believe it's unlikely that we will see Anteo bind used in the actual vaccine. So it won't be in the jab. It's unlikely. The science that's being used to develop these vaccines doesn't see an obvious path for Anteo bind to be used. But the relationship that we're forming up with these organisations might lead to conversations around its use in the future. So I think in terms of the relationship that we're forming up, we're starting a good conversation about how our technology could be used in vaccine more generally, and that's got a road to go. The immediate problem that we came across, and again it came through channels not necessarily connected to the vaccine industry, but ended up in the vaccine industry, is around QC testing. So billions of vaccine doses need to be delivered throughout the world, and they have to be checked to make sure that they are actually conforming with the design and the regulatory requirements. So the process of doing that QC testing is the development of a whole regime of testing parameters using particular technologies, one in particular which is Luminex, that we have definite connection to. And the testing process itself requires a Luminex bead to be coated and polysaccharide to be attached to it. And I won't go through the detail, but it's a very difficult process. And the use of Anteo bind improves that process quite dramatically. And so the QC testing portion of the process of bringing these vaccines to market is a role that we believe that we will play prevalently. Now, given the volume of vaccines that are required to be QC tested, we're seeing a market for that straight away. So we're focusing on it, and it's a sizable market. So who knows where it will go in the future? Yeah.
So thank you, Derek.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. We'll just end the Q&A. We have no more questions. Thank you, Derek.
Right. Well, thank you. Well, thanks for all the participants for the questions. Again, like last year, some of these presentations can be a little bit dry if we don't have good questions, and your questions today have been really good, and it's made it a much richer conversation, which I've really enjoyed. You can keep up to date with developments around the company. Obviously, we make announcements periodically when there's significant progression to be announced, and we will be doing that in the same way we have done in the near future and into next year. You can also keep up to date on our website when we update that more regularly, and we've got Twitter and LinkedIn pages that we're now updating more regularly as well, so please keep up to date with those. Again, just draw your attention to the two webinars that we did earlier in the month, one on energy and the other one on life sciences. So if you want some more information, please view those webinars again. They can provide you some more information about our business. I think today's webinar will be up on the website shortly, so you can watch a replay of this if you need to as well when we put it up on our website later on when it's finished. So thank you for that. Look, a couple of words from me. I've been really lucky enough to receive many encouraging words from shareholders during the course of this year about our progression and how well we've had success during the course of the year, and I thank you for all those people that have sent their best wishes and encouragement. What I will say is that I've stood in front of a group of 20 people who are just meters away from me right now, working very diligently in a lab, doing the things that we do, and those people have worked so hard. I can't express to you, their commitment and what they've done during the course of this very tumultuous year, where we had to go through a lockdown and go through COVID-19 ourselves. So those people deserve every bit as much of an accolade that I get, and I really appreciate their effort, and I express to the shareholders that that they are doing a fantastic job. In sharing the success, which I do with them quite regularly, whenever I receive notes from shareholders, we discuss it, and there's one thing that we all agree that we will never take for granted in our success, and that is, your continued support for our company. We have in great gratitude for the support from our shareholders, and we hope it continues on into the future, and we hope that we are doing a great job for you, and we look forward to announcing our success during the next course of the year as it progresses. Finally, I'd like to thank the board for their support, and Jack mentioned that earlier on in his address. I've had great success from the board, great support from the board, and particularly Jack, who has given me great encouragement and guidance during the course of the year as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and until next time we meet, please stay safe and have a good day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.